So instead of coffee this time, I'm having a beer, and I'm just again I'm reflecting on certain things, and I think it's a good idea at times to reflect on the successes you've had with the law, and maybe things you've imagined you've disliked, and reflecting on the thoughts and the ideas that you did overcome within you. You did overcome certain things that you should pay attention to. You should reflect on those successes as well. And I'm thinking about when Neville was told that he would never do anything with his voice when he went to speech school. And, he looks back at that and he said that, it feels like I needed that little push to get me to imagine that way. Because he said he went home after he was told that he would basically not make $1 off his voice. He started to imagine himself speaking and speaking and speaking. And that's something actually I did when I was young. No one ever told me that I wouldn't make money with my voice, but I'd always speak to myself all the time, and just contemplate on ideas, and this piqued my interest later in my life. But I just want to speak about some of the things I've heard in my life and things that I've had to disentangle the idea that was sort of put on me when I was young. I was told many times that I would amount to nothing, that I was good for nothing, and I was told that I would do nothing with my life. And at first, when I was younger, it was painful. But then as I got older, I kind of just ignored those people. But that's the point. The point I'm trying to make is that Neville had to ignore what the person said. I've also had people tell me something very negative towards me, and then in the same exact voice, singing my praises. So you can definitely change if you change the voices that you're hearing in your life. And you should see it as voices that you're hearing, because that is what you're hearing. And the nature of these voices, they had an impact on me. But I did something. I changed the way I would imagine, which is exactly what Neville did. Is that when you hear something that you otherwise don't agree upon about yourself, change your imagining. Neville started to see himself, speaking, even though he was just told the facts of the life. And that's what the flood is, right? And that's what Neville says, the flood is on. And you're going to hear these no's. You're going to hear doubting voices coming at you. You're going to hear all of this. And when you see that it's sort of already happening within you, that you already are ignoring the doubts, you already are ignoring the words that they feel like they're damning towards you, you ignore them within yourself, and then you just naturally don't pay attention to voices like that in your external. We're dealing with states. And when you see you're dealing with states, it is basically the idea that someone isn't necessarily evil themselves, is that they're in the state of evil or in the state of good, because you can move in between those. So you're not necessarily the state itself, but you're in a state. And we are the spirit, the I am that became man, and to experience man's world. And that's exactly what we're doing. And the consciousness that dwells within us is, in a sense, it obeys us. If I ask it to conjure up an image of evil towards another, it will conjure up that image. It allows me free range to imagine what I wish. But I shouldn't just imagine anything. I should imagine things that are beneficial to me, things that uplift me. And obviously those words that he heard, or the words that I've heard in my life, they didn't necessarily uplift me. And I've had to find my own voice inside that was determined, that was uplifting, that always seemed to know myself. It always seemed to know the right thing to say. And then I realized that voice was me the entire time. I might have felt that at certain moments in my life that it felt like another voice, something. I couldn't believe that I was that uplifting of myself. I didn't realize I cared that much about myself. But that voice in me was always still. It was always patient. It was always calm. It always knew. It was always knowing. And it's in everybody. And I've seen it in everyone. But it gets ignored. And you listen to the voices that told you no. Or you listen to the voices that have said that you would amount to nothing. And you wonder why they said that. You wonder why they think that. But if you could see that most likely You might have been feeling that already inside of you before they said it, and that's why it hurt. Then if you haven't conquered that inside of you, it's going to be challenging to conquer it outside of you. And how do you conquer a voice inside? And from studying Neville's work over the years, what I discovered is that it's indifference. You have to become indifferent. I used to fight with myself, inside myself, with these voices that make you feel like you should stop, that you should quit, that maybe they're right. Everyone has had that. And in Neville's point, he would say, forget all of that and assume the wish fulfilled. And I never try to change what Neville said, and I don't try to change what Scripture says. I just try to read it and just kind of take what I can from it. And what I hear from that when he says, forget all that and sort of take the labels off that you were given and assume something about yourself. It's something you have to try for yourself. And when you actually succeed, it becomes, you start to realize that really the only bondage you have is within you. And it was the belief in those voices. And when it comes to indifference, instead of fighting it, when you start to fight with things on the inside, or you start to force the wish fulfilled on yourself, or you try to force things, you're sort of implying that there's powers at play here that are in conflict with one another. But really, there's only one power here, and that's yourself. And so you're really just warring against yourself. And that's just logically what you're doing. Now, that might not necessarily fulfill the emotional side of you, but emotionally, it's an unkind thing to do. It's not necessarily efficient to fight within oneself. That should be obvious. So how do I get myself to not fight these words that otherwise are making me feel like I should stop? I've learned that it's just indifference. It's exactly what you would do if somebody were to say something you feel deeply untrue about you. You wouldn't fight with them. You would simply move on as if they're a voice in your head. You just completely move on, almost as if you didn't even hear it. And now you're not pretending and you're not ignoring. You're indifferent, meaning that there is no words that you speak back to yourself and there are no emotional replies. It's just moving on. And that's really what you're supposed to do when you move through states. So you had a certain idea of yourself for a long time that otherwise makes you feel small and you want to feel larger. But when you go to feel larger, you feel you don't feel like you're allowed to take that. You have to learn to become indifferent to the smallness in you. It's just an idea and it doesn't need a reaction. And you can test that. Do I need something physical first to stop this reaction? You'll see you don't. It's all within you. And you can test that, and you should test that. Am I allowed to feel larger than what I am now without anything physical? And you'll see that you can. And you should. And that's what I've gotten out of Neville's work. Now, this isn't the only thing I've gotten. I've had many experiences similar to his. But as far as the practicality of it, it comes down to you willing to be indifferent to the voices you don't want to hear within yourself, parts of you that you want to silence, and you're allowed to do so. And it doesn't matter necessarily what the words are. If you wish to close your ears to it and hear something else, you're allowed to. So really what you're doing is, in a sense, you're learning to let go of you let go of the labels. You let go of your reactions to the thoughts you don't want. You let go of listening to the voices. You drop it. You let it all go. And you'll find what emerges from that is a tranquility, a strength, a peace, a hope, a faith in yourself that you've always had. But we are given our attention to things that otherwise don't serve us. And Neville has said that many times. He wasn't perfect with his attention either, and he said this in his books. But he tried. And that's all we can ask for out of ourselves, is to try to become disciplined on this law. At times you're going to think things that you don't wish to think. You're going to feel things that you don't wish to feel about yourself. But you just learn to be patient and be disciplined and consistent on thinking of the ways you want to think about yourself. And when you start to test it and see that you don't necessarily need a physical thing in front of you first, then you can do it anywhere. Anywhere. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be drinking a beer. You could be anywhere. And imagine yourself free. And you can just treat it like a test. Can I see myself free from this thing that I otherwise feel in bondage to? This thing that I have felt always in bondage to? Can I feel that I can imagine beyond what people have told me I am? Can I supersede their judgment? And so you get told that you're not going to do anything with your voice. You get told you're not going to become anything in life. You're not going to do anything in life. Although you might have heard it, you don't have to believe it. And you won't. You're going to eventually see yourself in a high light, in a noble light, something that actually makes you feel motivated in yourself, something that you feel committed to. And that is what faith is. It's loyalty to the unseen state. Loyalty. And that's true loyalty to oneself. Because in this life, you're going to change. You're going to have to change. How you change and what you change into, you're either going to be a part of someone else's plan or you create your own. You either become what other people have told you or you decide for yourself what you're going to start imagining about yourself. And so if pressures come on and you're being pressed to change, you change in the way that benefits you, that motivates you, and you stay loyal to that. And loyalty is a true letting go of what you were and truly committing yourself to something new, the same way you would do it in any other, just the same way we commit to things in this world. It's something you fully believe in. It's something you hold. And even though doubting words come, you stay loyal to it. Even when you're told no, you stay loyal to it. And that's what Brazen Impudence is all about. And maybe that's what I should call this video. And that is what it's about, is really, when it comes down to it, physical obstacles are not necessarily that big of an issue. It's the words that you've been told. It's the words you believe in. And what words do you believe in? Do you believe your imagination when you see yourself beaming, when you see yourself radiant, when you see yourself in the ways that you wish? Do you believe in it? Do you believe your own imagination, or do you doubt it? And do you believe in these silly ideas that you're taught about yourself, or these gods who don't reply? You know, this is a God that we're speaking about that actually shows you yourself, that you hear yourself. There's action being done. There's activity being done. It's not dead. It's active. It's always working. But you have the ability to direct in the routes in which it goes down. And you, as Neville said, forget all of it. Forget all of that and assume your wish fulfilled. And I love his confidence in that, where, you know, I remember the story where he wanted to be with his son, and he said he imagined touching the back of his son's head in just a very simple scene, which implied that he had his son. And he said the family was speaking ill of him, and he just ignored it and decided to assume what he had anyways. And that's what a lot of us have to do. We have to ignore what otherwise was said and believe our imagination to be a power which supersedes the doubting words of other people. And it's something we have to remain disciplined in. So that's what this video was simply about. I just wanted to speak on the idea of, you know, being in a life of, being in the flood of facts in which you're taught and told who you are. And you need to learn to teach yourself and learn to speak new words that you wish, you know, fulfill your own desire there, where I'm sure you want to speak. You have a desire to speak new words to yourself, and you should fulfill that. And you don't need to, you know, wait for anything. You can start right now and change your own imagining. But as of right now, I feel completed in speaking. I think I'm going to be done. But thank you for listening.